Capital Connection continues now.
Welcome back. We're now going to talk about one of Governor Pritzker's big priority legislative items this year. It was a plan to allow certain community colleges in the state to offer four-year bachelor's degrees. Joining us now to talk about that is Brian Durham, the Executive Director of the Illinois Community College Board. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
This bill, or this proposal, has not gotten off to the best start here in the Capitol. There's a lot of negotiating going around it, but I want to just start here. How easy would it be for community colleges to implement changes like this, to implement new programs for bachelor's degrees like this? And what positive effect do you see coming out of that?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's never easy to implement a program. Colleges have to do basically a feasibility study to make sure that it's viable, to make sure they can afford it, to make sure that they have the faculty. But driving the decision, and I think as you think about benefit, it's about filling workforce gaps. It's about need. So in a local community, if they have a particular area where there are lots of openings, lots of student interest, and there's not enough capacity in the community to meet that need, a community college would be able to potentially step in and offer a baccalaureate degree if that's the credential that's needed for folks that go into those fields. But colleges would have to engage in some really robust analysis and consider if it made sense in their area to do it. And that includes partnerships across the region with workforce providers, universities, other colleges for that matter.
So you see this more as a more specific approach rather than just community colleges suddenly offering bachelor's degrees in every program they have. This would be more geared towards what that community needs.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great way to put it. If there is a particular shortage need, they might focus in that area. It's not about opening baccalaureate degrees up broadly, not by any means. And in fact, it's not at all about transfer type degrees. So you're not going to see bachelors in psychology, for example. These are the kind of things where you have, employers are scrambling to fill a need, or credentialing requirements have changed. And suddenly hospitals need more respiratory therapists, and they're not able to get them. And those are technical areas where associate degrees are already offered. So it'd be very limited in scope.
We've seen the major opposition to this bill are some of the four-year universities in the state already, especially maybe not the flagship ones that are going to be getting, international students from all over the country, all over the world coming to them, but more of those localized four-year universities have some concerns about essentially community colleges being able to step onto their turf, do it for cheaper, and take away some of that student population that they're already fighting to keep up. What is your response to those concerns, and are they legitimate?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so two things that I would flag in that respect. One is when you look at students and you consider their goals and what they want to do, we're really talking a lot about, first of all, non-traditional students, working students. Secondly, students that the baccalaureate degree might not have been an option at all. There was some survey work done by the Trustees Association, for example, and when they looked at that data, there were roughly 40% of students who wouldn't have considered going on, but if they had that opportunity in their community college in that particular field, then they would definitely think about that and be able to advance their careers. Secondly, I think it's really important to emphasize that this is not about undermining partnerships. And so there ought to be and should be, and I think will be, opportunities to build on existing partnerships, to develop new partnerships. And it may be that a college decides they want to do or pursue a degree in whatever field. They have a conversation with the university and the college agree that a different arrangement might work. I think that totally has to be on the table as well. The important principle is this is a tool in the toolbox. It's not the tool. It's not to replace other things. And universities and colleges already have great partnerships and work together very well.
The advantage of community colleges is that they're affordable, and obviously they're community-based, but that affordability aspect is such a huge piece. And you already talked about the feasibility studies that would need to go into this and the understanding of all of that. Would it be more expensive to go into a four-year? I mean, would we see increases in tuition for at least those specific programs because of this? And is there any concern at all that the overall cost of a community college education could change if this were to go into effect?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that's a great question. A couple of data points there. The proposed bill limits tuition and fees to 150% of current tuition. So there would be a cap on what a community college would be able to charge. So if they offered a respiratory care program at $5,000, the maximum they could charge would be $7,500. And they would need to factor that into feasibility study. They would need to factor that into what they look around in the region and see what's happening already. And then there's some national data. There's been some, 24 states have done this already. There's some national data that suggests that the cost does not go up astronomically from the community college's tuition. I mean, it varies, of course, across states, but the average is about a $500 difference in the way tuition changes in looking at that research.
Just as far as the general interest that Governor Pritzker has taken in community colleges specifically during his term here, we're about to go into some going to be pretty intense budget negotiations, I'm sure. What have you thought of just the increases that we've seen in things like MAP grant funding and a lot of the funding that's gone to community colleges? Is this a logical next step to that, or is this just a much bigger advancement than you could have expected for?
Well, I think if you look at it from an access point of view, these are all very tied together. I mean, the governor and the General Assembly's commitment to funding MAP so well over these last several years has created an environment where a community college student who's Pell and MAP eligible, middle income student, can go to a community college for free. I mean, it's almost Illinois' Promise program in that sense. And that's been great. Great for students, certainly great for colleges, and that's an access piece. You add to that looking at how do we help students get to the career they want. That's also access, right? I mean, community college baccalaureate is an access innovation, and it's among other things. I mean, all the funding that the General Assembly has been and the governor provided has been very helpful. Of course, I mean, we have conversations going on now around direct admissions, for example. All of this is about providing more opportunity, more access for Illinois students.
Before I let you go, just one more question. Obviously, we saw this attempted to get called in the committee earlier this session, didn't get called. We hit a pretty big deadline just this past week with third reading deadline coming by, and I'm just curious, a lot of these deadlines end up being arbitrary in the Capitol, but it doesn't seem like this topic's going away anytime before, for this session at least, or even future topics as well. Negotiations still ongoing, fair to say?
Negotiations are ongoing. I think that's right. I think the conversation is still very much in progress.
And we talked about the implementation eventually down the road, but what would be the ramp ideally to get these programs implemented?
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, that somewhat depends on the final product of the bill, but ultimately, it would take us a little while to revise some processes, build some applications, work through some ideas that are present in the bill. And I mean, that's not even accounting for the fact that the colleges would have to decide if this makes sense. Certainly, we would want them talking to their university partners and making sure it makes sense, doing that feasibility study, assessing need. I mean, I don't know the future, but certainly I wouldn't see anything happening. I wouldn't see a baccalaureate hitting the street any sooner than a year, if not longer than that.
Got it. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
We'll be right back.